So let's start this hour with my Friday focus this week. Probate might not be something that we talk about every day, but it is actually quite important in passing on our savings, houses and estates to our loved ones when we pass on. It's the act which must be passed to allow the executor of a will to deal with the property of a deceased person. But since COVID hit, the granting of it has slowed right down. And there's been reports that at the start of the pandemic, the issuing of documents required to make a probate application were delayed by up to 2 or 3 months. The process has improved, but there's still issues with HMRC staff working from home being blamed. So I'm joined in the studio by Priti Shah, who's a partner at Stockdent and Solicitors and an expert on probate. Right, so Priti, really good to talk to you. So, as I sort of explained probate, but can you, in your way, explain it to people as they listen?
OK, so you quite rightly said probate is a court document that you need as an executor to be able to deal with the estate of somebody who's passed away. If someone died without a will, that would be under intestacy and it would be a grant of representation. But the document that you need when someone has a will is called a grant of probate. The process is broadly that you need to ascertain the deceased's assets or the liabilities and then file a return with HMRC. And then once they issue a receipt, you then go and apply for a grant of probate. You're quite right. There have been significant delays both with HMRC and with the probate registry in processing this application, and which causes considerable distress to the beneficiaries of the estate, the executors, at an already very difficult time.
Well, how long should it take? Because I know, even before the pandemic, of people who've been waiting for absolutely ages for probate. And, I mean, one of my friends whose mother passed away, I think she's been waiting for, I think it's 8 months or so, just for that. And, I mean, that to me, and I know of a friend of my mother's who's still waiting for it to all go through and can't access any of the funds or anything like that, that her husband.
So we've had a mixed response in that some applications have been processed in a week, bizarrely, and then some applications have been stuck for about 4 months. So what we tend to do is we just regularly chase the probate registry, and that we find makes them happen quicker.
So if somebody passes away, you get the probate sort of sorted. How soon can you get, say if they've left you a house or something like that, how soon do those assets then get released into that to that person?
OK. So once you have a grant of probate, they then need to be sent off to the banks, the building society, where the deceased may have had bank accounts. They need to be sent to the land registry to transfer the property to the beneficiary. Again, we're having delays not just with the probate registry and HMRC, but also with the land registry and the Office of Public Guardian, and just generally it's been very slow. So
could somebody be waiting to access funds for a long time? And if so, if they are, how long are they expected to wait? So say if a partner dies and leaves things to the other partner, the other partner can't access any of those things until you've got through the whole thing.
Yeah. You're quite right. I mean, what we try and advise clients to do is if they can have joint accounts with their spouse, so that if the inevitable happens, then at least they have access to some funds and they're not in this situation, this destitute situation where they're waiting for months for probate to be granted and for the estate to be administered.
I see. So a joint account would prevent that from being closed down?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, so once you have a joint account, if one person dies, it automatically passes to the survivor. So at least they have access to funds and they don't find themselves in a difficult situation.
Yeah, but it just seems... So why does it take so long for all this to happen? So what would you say the average time is between... OK, so you get your probate, so just say it happens within a month. Then what's the average time before sort of the end of all of this so that you can sort of get on with living?
So once you've got probate, the process should be quite quick in terms of cashing in with the bank accounts. And as I said, the land registry is taking a little bit longer than before, but you shouldn't be waiting for longer than a few weeks.
Really? Because I hear people waiting for months and months and months to get this whole thing through. Yeah. What exactly is happening then? So somebody's gone online. Do you have to do it yourself? What's the process?
So you can do it yourself. It's set up so that you can make an application online. But obviously, if you take legal advice, then the solicitor can help you with the process, guide you through the process, and they know the rules with regard to all the tax reliefs that are available, and they can help you claim those reliefs and have hopefully a better outcome than if they did it themselves. Because as a layperson, as with any trade or profession, if you're not a specialist or an expert in that area of law, then you may not know what to do and what reliefs to claim and to get the best outcome for yourselves.
Because I heard that it recently went online, and that's been a big issue, and obviously with the COVID pandemic as well.
Yeah, they have had teething problems, but what we try and do where we've got probate that may get stuck with the probate registry is try and anticipate the problem. So the probate registry, for example, don't like a will which has been stapled, or if it hasn't been signed and witnessed in the right way, that's when it gets stuck at the probate registry. So we try and anticipate those problems and address them before we lodge the papers with the probate registry, so as to reduce that time that they take to process it.
Well, let's have a chat with John Stevenson. Excuse me. He's the Conservative MP for Carlisle. Now, John, you've spoken out in the past of the failures of the probate system. What are your main frustrations?
Well, first of all, I would say, I am actually a practicing solicitor as well, and for the best part of my career, the probate registry was a really good outfit. You were reliable, you got your probate back in a timely manner, and it was very effective. Then they decided to centralise the system, to digitalise it, and they started to run into many, many problems, and it created a great amount of frustration for people, because it's a very sensitive time when somebody dies. You want to move on, you want to have access to bank accounts, you want to be able to sell your property, and if there's a delay in getting the legal document that allows you to do those things, it can be incredibly frustrating. And unfortunately, the probate registry have, in my view, seen a service that was once very good deteriorate considerably. They are beginning to get their act together. I mean, I've had a Westminster Hall debate about this very issue. I've met with government ministers and I have been in communication with them on a regular basis. But it has been very frustrating.
Do you think that the civil servants working from home has had an impact on the whole processing of applications?
Personally, I do, in fact, think there have been some hitches in doing that. Clearly, the digitalisation of the service was a problem, and they've had glitches in the system. They are starting to overcome them, and you are starting to see the times that it takes for a probate application drop down. I mean, when the service was working, in my view, very well, it was 3 to 4 weeks. It's now probably a little bit longer than that. A few months ago, it could have been 2 or 3 months before you got your probate back. So we are seeing an improvement to the service, but there is some time to go before we do actually see it back to where it was before.
So in your view, if it was to be streamlined, what would you change about it?
Well, I don't mind it being streamlined and the service improved, but I think they've got to recognise they are actually a customer-facing service, and they are dealing with something that can be very sensitive. People want to get on with their lives effectively. They want to be able to access the probate so they can deal with house sales, they can deal with the closing of bank accounts. And I think they've got to be a little bit more customer-friendly. In our experience, ringing up, for example, for help and assistance, the last I heard from the department was the average response for a telephone call was 8 minutes, which I think is unacceptable. They've got to get that right down. They are getting the actual turnaround time down, but when there are complications of the probate application, there does seem to be unnecessary delays before those matters are resolved. And those are the glitches that they've got to get out of the system.
Well, listen, John, thank you so much for talking to us. That's John Stevenson. He's an MP for Carlisle, the Conservative Party. Pretty, you heard what he said. I want to ask you this about if somebody dies without leaving a will, then what are the issues there with respect, and how does probate work then, or doesn't it work?
OK, so as I alluded earlier, it's called a grant of representation. It's the same process pretty much, but it's just slightly different because you've got to follow the rules of intestacy, and depending on who survived the deceased, whether he had a wife, children, there's a hierarchy of people who can apply for the grant of representation. And then it's only when they get the grant that they can actually deal with the assets of the deceased. With probate, in theory, your authority comes from the will and therefore on death. So, in theory, it should be slightly easier than if you don't have a will at all.
Right, OK. And you said it's a process, a hierarchy. What about an ex-partner? Can they be in the hierarchy even if you're not with them?
No.
I never married anyone just to make sure they could do anything. Make sure of that.
Good thinking. No, so the first person would be the spouse, and then the children, and then the parents, and so on, depending on who's alive.
OK. Well, listen, Priti, thank you so much for joining us. And if people, is there a central place that people need to go to get this information with regard to this? Is there a website or something that you could direct them to?
Oh, well, so there is a government website, but if anybody would like to email me, I'm pshah@ogrs.denton.com. I'm happy to answer any queries anyone has.
Very generous
So
of
happy
you,
to
Priti.
help.
I thought you were just going to give the government one out, but if you've got these lot to get in touch with you, watch out. Be careful what you wish for. Priti, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nana, for having me on your show.
Thank you.